All right, check the mic. Our first instant reaction on this Week 18 Saturday. The Tampa Bay Bucks get the win 16-14 over the Carolina Panthers. Just a couple 8 and 9 football teams right now, Sam, waiting now to determine who is going to win the NFC South. Tomorrow, it's going to be the Saints and Falcons determining the South. If the Saints win, it's the Bucks. If the Falcons win, it's the Panthers, as expected.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, this is kind of exactly what we said, right? The most NFC South thing that could happen is Tampa Bay would win this game, which is no longer a win and in game because now you're reliant on the other game. Now you got to wait a full day, which is kind of crazy. I still think that's ridiculous scheduling where all these other games where the divisions are, or other games are contingent they're happening at the same time. Meanwhile, this game happens at 4:00 on a Saturday, and everyone's got to wait around for almost a full day to figure out what the other game's going to do.
Yeah, most of the time, when games are dependent on each other, they put them head to head. I get why the NFL did it. There was really three huge games where there were 3 games where actual playoff implications were on the line as far as in or out, and that's this one. Well, 2 where there's in or out, and then the number 1 seed tonight. Anyway. As far as the game goes, Bucks get it 16-14. Heavy rain in this one. You had the Bucks get up early. Baker throws an interception. Panthers come back into it. In the second half, if you're a Panthers fan, man, you're probably a little upset as every time you were mounting a comeback, little bit of officiating that went against the Panthers in this one. Tedero and McMillan, offensive pass interference. They missed. Servassier Dennis ripping someone's helmet off was Tommy Tremble's helmet. Another kind of a phantom defensive pass interference against the Panthers. And then you get the fumble play. I mean, just not a great game for the Zebras.
No, it was terrible officiating again. Like you sort of think of it because it's a weird Saturday afternoon game. You're like, oh, it's the playoffs. And it's not actually, it's the backup game on Saturday afternoon where you've got backup booth, you've got backup rules official, and apparently you've got backup officials as well. So the backup officials, or whatever the lowest crew of the officiating group, was pretty terrible in this game. The one where they just blew it dead on a clearly thrown backwards pass that Rico Dowdle didn't catch, like dropped the ball, it's live, it bounces right back up to him anyway, and he just stops playing. They blow a whistle, and you're like, that's live. What are we doing blowing that dead? And then they came on and announced it as like the ball went out of bounds. You're like, even your explanation for what happened on that play is wrong.
They said out of bounds. They said out of bounds rather than, it was just an inadvertent whistle. And the good part is they at least got it right, and the Panthers lost 6 yards on the play. But I don't know what the Bucks would have done differently other than tackle Dowdle, maybe forced a fumble.
Knocked the ball out from his hands.
Yeah. That was kind of a wild play. I guess that kind of worked in the Panthers' favor anyway. But I thought what'd you think of the McMillan offensive pass interference? Within 5 yards, he just kind of throws the corner off of him by the head, but he threw him off within the contact zone where both receiver and corner are going to be able to get a little bit more physical.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's harsh. Like that's one of those ones where it's like you threw a penalty because he won physically too much. Like he was too strong for the guy he was going up against, so it's a penalty. And like, well, I mean, would that be a penalty if he was just less strong and did exactly the same thing and it just didn't launch the corner 3 yards to the left? Because if the answer is no, then it probably shouldn't be a penalty just because he's that strong.
That's the part of those calls that are difficult. We talked about this on the other side when it comes to roughing the passer all the time. When a guy like Bryce Young or Tua get spiked to the turf by somebody much bigger than them, it's like, well, of course that's roughing. But when it's Josh Allen or a Cam Newton-sized type of player, those types of plays, they don't necessarily get the calls. So, T-Mac's just stronger than everybody. As far as the game flow deal, I mean, the rain was a huge factor early on.
Yeah,
the Bucks,
it was bad.
Yeah, the Bucks were catching the ball a little bit better. You know, you tweeted out about, if you're playing with no gloves, it's bad because it's not easy to catch in the rain.
It's terrible trying to catch with no gloves. Like, this is the thing people don't understand, that catching a very wet football with no gloves is almost impossible, and yet it's easier than doing it with the gloves. That's how bad the gloves are when it gets beyond a certain level of wet, is that it's like they're actively worse than catching with just bare hands, which is almost impossible. So like when everybody is dumping the receiving gloves, that means it's an absolute downpour. Everything is soaking wet. It's almost impossible to catch anything.
And that's what it was. I mean, a couple key plays in this game. Bucks were up 10-0. Baker Mayfield misread, throws an interception. He had a really clean first drive. Like I said, Bucks were catching the ball. Panthers had dropped a couple early on. Clean first drive for the Bucks, but it's 10-0. The bad read by Baker over the middle of the field, picked off. That gave the Panthers a short field. That made it 10-7. A couple other key plays. I mean, as the Panthers were making a comeback, the two plays that worked both sides, they had a flea flicker called in Bucks territory. Rico Dowdle slips, fumbles, Bucks recover. That's in the middle of a 2-score game. And then it looked like for a minute the Panthers may have saved the game, or at least could have seen, the future where they may have saved the game with a blocked field goal, which would have made it, hey, you need 2 touchdowns. And then when the Panthers score late, they only needed a game-winning field goal, but they couldn't stop the Bucks on the final drive anyway. So a couple interesting high-leverage plays there that went both ways, but ended up, the Bucks made just a few more plays than Carolina in this one.
What did you think of the call for the flea flicker? Because that's one of those ones where it goes wrong, and therefore everybody is like, what was that play call? You're getting too cute. That was idiotic. It's like, I mean, do you have any more of a reasonable expectation that a flea flicker is going to result in like a guy falling over than any other play you would be running? Like,
no,
it kind of feels like that's just unlucky.
No, I mean, look, if it was at the time, by the way, in the second half, it had stopped raining until late in the fourth quarter, actually, when the Bucks started to run the clock out after Carolina scored. So maybe it was a slick field, but you're not like,
sure,
don't call this play because it's a slick field, because then you can't call any play because you have to run, you have to catch, you have to play on the field. So everybody hates the flea flicker when it doesn't work. Remember Buffalo ran one a couple of years ago? They were up like 3 scores and they ran it. It's like, they killed all their momentum or whatever. No, it's just a bad play. It's not the momentum that was the problem. It's the turnover. It's the fact that you lost the football when you were in Bucks territory.
You lost it. You lost it because Dowdle, planting his foot in the ground to turn, back around and pitch it, slipped. And then, he made it worse by, as he's slipping, he still tries to do the pitch, which maybe is an even bigger problem than slipping in the first place. Then Bryce Young can't, get hold of the ball, and then it's a turnover. But I don't think that a flea flicker is inherently wildly more risky in bad conditions than any other play that you would be calling in that situation.
I'm trying to find the play right now and see if I can go back, because it was around the 20-yard line. That might be the only question that I have, is why are you doing that in the red zone? Or
they were going for that flea flicker screen thing that you've seen recently, where it's it's not the deep shot over the top. It's like it's throwing a screen off the back of it when they're busy panicking.
But even then, the benefit to the flea flicker is somebody says, get back, and they sprint back, and you just don't have as much field, to create that space. So maybe it would have worked. I don't know. It seemed odd at the place where they did it more so than anything. So
yeah, I just don't. I think the initial knee jerk of why the flea flicker's crazy. That's way too risky. Is it? I mean, it doesn't strike me as any more of a risky. It's not like it was like a triple reverse throwback. Multiple times across the field, wide receivers throwing the ball 30 yards across the field in wet conditions. You're not asking him to do anything crazy like that. You're literally just asking a running back to stomp his feet, turn around, and pitch the ball back to the quarterback. That feels pretty low risk.
One interesting thing that came up, because the Panthers were down 16-7, and then 2 big plays, right? A 4th down bomb to Tetaroa McMillan where he gets behind the defense, and then the throw from Bryce Young to Jalen Coker was just outstanding. I mean, it was a great play by Coker, but to put it up high, away from coverage, in the red zone was a great play. I thought it was interesting because I tweeted out today, and I know the broadcast was mentioning it, of Bryce Young's 14 career wins, 12 involved a game-winning drive. And someone quote tweeted, a guy named AB with Fire Shane in his name, was basically like, this is isn't willing to throw to tight windows until he has to stat about Bryce Young, which had me thinking, as he's throwing the ball down the field, making some big time throws when he needed to, maybe something to it if the Panthers could open it up a little bit earlier, because they finally threw the ball down the field and made some plays.
They did, yeah. It was interesting because late in the game you were getting because this team has been so bizarrely random, 1 win, 1 loss, back to back to back, all sorts. So you were getting into the world of conflicting trends. So the Panthers going into this sort of final stretch, they had the 3rd best record in the NFL in 1-score games. That's 7-2. but they're also 1-6 when they turn the ball over 2 or more times in a game, and they turn the ball over 2 times heading into that. So you're like, well, one of these things has got to break. Like both of these streaks can't continue. Which one's going?
The Bucs were 0-8 anytime Baker threw an interception, which of course is a perfect correlation causation stat. But people are like, he's 0-8 when he throws a pick and he threw one early. This game's over, So something had to give, and it did. Anyway, hey, it's an ugly NFC South game. Ugly game. Someone's got to get into the playoffs here. And it comes down to tomorrow. So if you're just tuning in, the scenario is if the New Orleans Saints beat the Falcons tomorrow, the Bucs are in. If the Atlanta Falcons beat the Saints tomorrow, the Panthers are in. So each team has to root for their hated division rival of choice. So PFF Eric is rooting for PFF Zach and the Falcons. And the Bucs have to root for the Saints.
Yeah.
See what happens tomorrow at 1.
Absolutely. I mean, I do genuinely feel a bit sorry for the Bucs that they have to sit there for like 17 hours and root for what is still the upset to happen. Like, and Atlanta, I think, has shut down a couple of people already. Like, they've not shut down, but like ruled them out for the game. So already there's like a couple of guys that aren't going to be going for Atlanta that you're like, obviously you feel great that you won the game. You've at least got a chance, but they can't feel great about that game right now.
I mean, well, the Saints, they have no Chris Olave either. It's a red-hot Saints team. A couple hot teams, though, Saints and the Falcons. So it gives you something to look for, though, on that game. Either way, both the Bucs. So this is the second Bucs win. I've talked about this all throughout the preview. Second Bucs win since October. They're absolutely still reeling going into the playoffs despite this win. Panthers, 2 straight losses. Messed up the win one, lose one deal. They're reeling going into the playoffs. So either way, one of these 8 and 9 teams is getting a home game next week, either against the Seattle Seahawks or the Los Angeles Rams, most likely.
Yeah, and you wouldn't feel good about either one of them. The only difference to me is that we've at least seen Carolina for no reason beat a very good football team. Like, they beat the Rams when there was zero reason for that to happen. Like, and in order for it to happen, they needed a bunch of freaky plays like turnovers and 4th and long, conversions and touchdowns and stuff. So like, it's probably not going to happen. We've really seen they're capable of it. At the moment, there's no real evidence that the Bucs are even capable of that, let alone is it likely to happen. So for that reason alone, I think I would want the Panthers to get there because at least theoretically, we've seen this happen already. With the Bucs, it's like I really can't see a world where the Bucs play in that game and anything other than just getting wrecked happens.
All right, so Bucs get the win. We get to watch Saints Falcons and have something on the line tomorrow. By the way, really quick pet peeve here, Sam. You got one. When did networks start lying to us? When did they start lying about start times to the game?
They're saying 7:45.
They've been saying the game's at 8. The game is at 8 o'clock.
I was wondering what the hell that was.
This has happened the last couple years. And watch tomorrow night on Sunday Night Football when Tirico announces the playoff schedule and whatever NBC game they have, they put it an hour early. They'll be like, "Oh, we'll be out here." The game start. They'll be like game time 3:15 when the game's actually 4:15.
So they're giving you the broadcast start.
They're giving the coverage time, so they're getting you to tune in early. Because I remember my dad last year was like, "Hey, is the game at 3:15?" I said, "No, Dad, it's at 4:15." They lied to you because they used to have like fine print coverage starts at. Right? They'd show the game time and they'd say coverage starts at. Now they're just straight up lying to you. This game is at 8 o'clock tonight, not 7:45.
Yeah.
Now they're telling me that the countdown says 13 minutes right now. That brings you to 7:50. Right. I think that's a lie. It is not at 7:50. The game is at 8.
No, you can't. Yeah. If you're putting a time that just says X game at whatever, the time you have to give the kickoff time. It's not, nobody's interested in when coverage starts. That's not what anybody is ever searching for when they're looking for when is this game. They're looking for kickoff. And that's universal. Every sport in the world. If you're going to throw one number, it cannot be that number. That's crazy.
Kickoff, right? I got chores to do. I need to know when to be back for the kickoff because I don't want to watch your pregame. Most of us don't want to watch your pregame, and you're lying to us to get a few extra eyeballs. And this is new. This is over the last couple of years. They started straight up lying to us, right? This is different.
Yeah, that's bad. I was looking at that. And I'm like, what? Yeah. What kind of crazy start time is that for this second game? 7:45? That's nuts.
I'm taking it to X. I'm taking it to the people with my complaint. We're going. All right. By the way,
Throw in some suggestions for the name of the bear here, by the way. That was a Christmas present. We went through the whatever they call it, Great Smoky Mountains at one point. I didn't get one of these things. I got one for Christmas, and now so I need to name it.
Wow, look at names for the bear. All right, put them in the chat, put them in the comments. We're doing 2 instant reactions, so we'll be back after Niners Seahawks. Hit subscribe, do the thumbs up, do all the things. Enjoy